Okay,
Okay.
there we go. Hello, Julie.
Hi. Good morning.
It's been a long time,
It has.
and we missed talking about many astrological events.
We have. Although
And
they're on my podcast, they're on the monthly podcast, and they're on my insights column. That they're there, but not as much fun as this.
well, I have your monthly insights that I just leave open on my computer, and I just scroll down for the day to see what's happening for the day. So I highly suggest people do that just to get an astrological sort of nugget. Okay. So, but let's talk about the major astrological event that happened. Um, and this is I have a very burning question in my mind because because I think yesterday or the day before all the emails and Instagram posts were flying about Jupiter and Neptune making the big conjunction, and it was a day that was going to bring fortune for the rest of our lives. And it was
People
all
always overestimate the goodness of Jupiter. I swear.
and like it was zippity doo dah from here on out. So my question
Is that really what it said? Zippity doo dah from here on out?
that's
Like,
that's my nutshell of all the information that I read.
right. I guess, the positive thinkers. I mean, I'm not a negative thinker, but I think that too much, like Jupiter's like a big ball of hot air.
Yeah.
It basically isn't. I mean, it's considered to be the greater benefic, but if you have a bad aspect from Jupiter, you want to kill yourself. It's Jupiter is the judge, and when the judge likes you, well, then you feel good. But when the judge doesn't like you, you don't feel good. So depends on where that conjunction fell, whether or not you were positive or negative. Although I have to say it fell in a hard place in my chart. And if I hadn't known about the conjunction, I would have been way more upset. But I kept saying, oh, Jupiter, Neptune, chaos, whatever. Kitchen, no big deal. So it was funny. I felt like the astrology helped me to stay positive. So that's one way to use it. But I don't think the planets. Neptune is very tricky. Neptune is a tricky fish, right? So Neptune is the great big swirling oceanic collective unconscious that we all feel. And Neptune's been in Pisces since, for at least 7 years or 8 years or something. So we've been dealing with that. Neptune hasn't been doing a whole lot of positive stuff. It's been semi-squaring a lot of planets. It's just been dragging things down. So then in December, I think Jupiter joined Neptune in Pisces. And so, very end of December, Jupiter went into Pisces. So, and it was heading to this conjunction, which culminated this past week. So if you read something like that from a more neutral perspective, I think you get a better idea of what it's really about. And it can be very positive, but it can also be very overwhelming, and it can drown you in its intent. It can drown us in the deluge, right? So, there's a huge snowstorm happening in Winnipeg right now. Like, it's a deluge. They can't, here it is, it's April, and they can't leave the house. I don't think they're enjoying the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction very much, right? Because if it heats up very fast, it will, like it's going to be 30 centimeters or something of snow. So it's precipitation.
Right.
So, I mean, that's Winnipeg. I'm not feeling it here in Toronto. But I think it's important to understand that it's neither positive nor negative. It depends.
Right.
So Jupiter tends to expand everything it touches. It makes it more. So I think one way to interpret it, and I think the influence of it, it's like it culminated on April 12th. And then it won't come back. Jupiter will go into Aries and it'll go back into Pisces, but it won't conjunct Neptune again. So it's a one-time only.
Yeah.
So I think it's made it very clear that we aren't just all connected on the internet, but we're also connected on what a friend of mine calls the internet.
The internet.
Right? The internet.
Right.
We're also connected in terms of our feelings and our dreams and our hopes and our, like we feel what other people feel.
Mhm.
Right? So, you wanna say everything's great from here. Well, it isn't. There's a gazillion refugees on the planet who have no place to call home, and there's millions of people fleeing from a war that shouldn't be happening, right? So I think that I don't think we need to tear our hair out because of one thing or the other, but I think I think what we really need to understand is that Pisces is about compassion, and Jupiter is about expansion, and Neptune is about connection.
Mhm.
So we all need to use this conjunction to allow ourselves to feel compassion, to feel with all the people on the planet, the joys and the sorrows, but the sorrows are intense. The planet itself is, in danger. So what it kind of suggests is that if we would allow ourselves to feel it, we could deal with it better.
Yeah.
So I don't know, is that clear? And then the influence of it, it's sort of like Jupiter conjuncts Neptune, and it opens the door.
Right.
It opens the door to Neptune at a more, a bigger level, a bigger extreme.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of my question. Like, people tend to celebrate, and I get it. Like, if you don't sort of know astrology, then you rely on other people's information for sure. I get that. Um, but it seems to me that it's like the effect of it isn't just that day. It culminates there, but now it's over, right? Like, we should have been celebrating or noticing or paying attention to it, like you said, since Jupiter arrived in Pisces. Like, and to really
But we have been, we just don't know that that's what we're doing.
right,
Yeah.
right.
I think
So,
I mean, any excuse for a celebration is a good idea. I don't,
yeah,
I went down to the beach. I went down to the beach with a couple of friends, and we sang songs. We sang water songs.
nice.
Yeah. So I think that, and we did it to acknowledge the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction on the day of the conjunction.
Right.
I don't think there's anything misguided about, wanting to channel it in a positive way. That's what we're doing. We're in the below. We're channeling the above and hoping to use it for the best possible uses. We want it to be about compassion.
Yeah, and I mean, my experience, as you know, I broke my ankle, which in part I would say had to do with this transit and other, as you mentioned, the other transits that were happening. It was
Is it squaring your chart?
yeah, it was it was squaring a lot, and but I have to say the experience was, it's not nice to break an ankle, but I did have an outpouring of support and love from my friends.
Isn't that wonderful? Compassion.
So I felt very, very loved, like
Yeah.
you texted me and you didn't even know I broke my ankle. And you texted me and said, "Are you okay? It looks like you're having a rough transit."
Well, I knew Jupiter and Neptune were ganging up on you.
They did. And yeah, so maybe that's why I'm like reluctant to celebrate. But I noticed that there was an outpouring of love from you and from other friends who came and brought me groceries, and my
Wonderful.
daughter's actually really, really nice to me. And there's been a lot of compassion, and that feels really good. So
Yes, and even in the midst of utter misery, we have the capacity to feel joy. I think that's the ultimate. I think what you're describing is the ultimate gift of Jupiter and Neptune. To really appreciate the love and the compassion that came towards you when you needed it.
that's right. Yeah,
You don't have to feel guilty, and you don't have to feel anything negative. You could just receive it,
that's right.
right? Because
Yeah,
it makes people feel good to give it.
yeah, it did, and it felt really
That's a lovely example.
yeah. So it's like you said, it's never positive or negative. There's always lots of both.
And it's as human beings who use the sky this way, it's up to us to do what we do with it,
That's
right?
right.
It's up to me. I was, in my particular drama with Neptune and Jupiter squaring the ruler of my house of home, I was supposed to have something done and I wanted it done on time, and it wasn't getting done on time. And I had no kitchen. I had to empty out my entire kitchen. And I started to get really anxious, which always becomes anger in me. And I decided that I would say nothing. I would suck it up. And it wasn't that hard. But what I got out of doing that was so gracious. It was such a lovely feeling of like, what I understood was, if I had let loose with that, it would have been projection. It would have just been my anxiety, right? And instead, I understood how cared for I am, and how life just gets in the way, and how, yeah, I'm eating up in my bedroom until it's done. At least I have a bedroom, right? So yeah, so it's like we get to decide what we do with the energy. It's really hard to believe that, because we can be in dire straits, right? You could have been a miserable wretch with your broken ankle. You could have just been a miserable wretch.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then the experience of the generosity and compassion and love made me feel actually really, maybe probably better than if I hadn't. In a
Right.
way.
But you know what? If you had been a miserable wretch, then you would have needed a different kind of compassion.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So it still would be the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, that's good. Thank you for answering that question about the transits, the larger transits.
So just one more thing.
Yeah.
In terms of the influence of the Jupiter Neptune conjunction, she said, pointing her finger, Mars will be retrograde in October. And when Mars goes retrograde, it's going to square the degree where the Jupiter Neptune conjunction happened.
Oh.
And you're going to have to watch out for your ankle. I'm going to have to take care of my kitchen, right? We're going to get a different view of the same reality, because Mars, when it's retrograde, will square Neptune. And that's how you time the transit, right?
Okay.
It opened up here, but it's not really done until the Mars, at least for this year, until the Mars. So my first astrology teacher, Eleanor Bach, used to call it a sensitive degree. She'd say a degree would get sensitized and it would last for a while, that sensitivity. So I think the sensitivity of this degree will take us into the fall.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. That's good information to have. Also, that reminds me that there is Venus is going to hit that sensitive degree, and Mars is going to hit that sensitive degree soon. Is that correct?
Yeah, those are momentary triggers, but the Mars retrograde will happen 3 times. It'll be a heavier trigger.
Okay.
But yes, you can always look out for anything that happens at around 23 degrees of Pisces, or of a mutable sign. Just live it up. Yeah.
And I'm optimistic that maybe we could celebrate Venus hitting. I can't help but be Sagittarian. I'm optimistic.
Well, Venus, I mean, so they're all going to square they're all bringing out your Mars and Pisces squaring your Sag.
Okay.
It's your Mars square to Sag. Okay. So every time you get an activation of that, you have to remember that you have that going on in your life.
Okay. Yeah.
Same for everybody.
If somebody's having a positive, or whatever experience people are having around this time, it's going to be reactivated, whether it's positive or negative or whatever it is.
Yeah, but if you don't have a degree that's in your chart that matches the degree of what's happening, you might not notice it.
I see. Oh, so that's why I'm with Mars in my 3rd house, and everything hitting it, I'm a little bit sharper with my tongue these days.
Right. Yeah. Right. One of the little known qualities of Pisces is that if you're not in touch with your own feelings, you want other people to feel your misery, and so you'll make them miserable so that they can show you what you're feeling, and then you can disown it. Pisces can be very sharp and mean if it's not careful.
Yes, I'm trying to be careful. Okay, so on to the full moon that's coming this weekend.
Full moon is full of contradictions, really. It's it's a big full moon, right? It's Easter and it's Passover and it's Ramadan and it's the first full moon of the spring. That's why it's such a big deal. So it's squaring Pluto, which is doom da doom doom, and it's trining Saturn, which is stay grounded. It's okay. You're gonna be fine. So it's doing both. It's right kind of smack dab between them. So I think it's interesting because when Mercury goes retrograde in next month in May, and then goes direct in early June, the station where Mercury goes direct is going to trine Pluto. This full moon is squaring Pluto.
Okay.
Right? The station direct on June 3rd of Mercury is going to square Saturn, and this full moon is trining Saturn.
Oh, okay.
Right? So this is a case of sensitive degrees. So I think the square to Pluto is horrifying. It's the horrible stuff that's happening. I actually have been thinking a lot, of course, about Pluto and the fact that Pluto, if you think of Pluto as a character, Pluto doesn't differentiate between transformation and destruction.
Right.
It's like all roads lead to change.
Right.
And
However,
Pluto really has the long view.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the symbolism of resurrection and escape from slavery and all that stuff is right on for this full moon. And the fact that we continuously liberate ourselves. We never give up wanting freedom. Never, never, never. There are periods where we don't have it. There are periods where we do have it, but that never dies in human beings. Along with greed, I guess, and aggression. So I think it's time to understand that what's going on in the world right now is a crisis point because it's change. Yeah. And the actual change can't differentiate between destruction and transformation.
That's
or creative change.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's definitely, full moons are always about celebration.
Okay. It sounds like a full moon drama. I guess because Aries, the full moon is in Libra. The moon's in Libra and the sun's in Aries, so they're opposing each other. And as you were saying in your insights, it can be warring attitudes. It can be also working out issues between yourself and others. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. The other thing I've been thinking about is that, everyone's calling it a war, right? What's happening in the Ukraine. But the Ukraine didn't want a war. The Ukraine was minding its own business.
Right.
And it got attacked. And so now it's in a war. It's not like the Ukraine chose to be in a war.
Right.
So I was thinking how war is one-sided, really. You get attacked and you have two choices. You can just lay down and die, or you can say no.
Fight back. Right.
And I think extreme peace people would say, well, it's better to lay down and die than it is to pick up arms against an attacker, but most of us aren't there. And I'm not sure that's the right idea anyway.
Right.
I have no ultimate comment on that. But I was thinking about that, that Aries is that kind of belligerence that forces you to react.
Right.
So that's what we're dealing with in ourselves as individuals. That's what we're dealing with, is that impulse.
Okay. And do you have any guidance for people, like how to manage if they do feel belligerent, or they're the recipient of belligerence or an attack?
I would say to be in awe of your reaction, your reactive belligerence.
Okay.
Be in awe that your response matches the aggression.
Right.
And then pause if you can, because Saturn says you can,
Right.
and ask yourself, what would Maisie Dobbs do?
Who's Macy Dobbs?
Oh, Maisie Dobbs is a wonderful investigative person in World War I and World War II. But actually, so the author wrote a book called What Would Maisie Do? As well as all the adventures. But I mean, she's like a psychoanalytical investigator, psychoanalyst. It's great. It's a great little mystery series. But what would Jesus do? What would anyone do? Just ask yourself, if you were really wise, is there another response? If you're in a situation where someone comes at you with a club, you want to get out of the way or save your own life. Absolutely. But most of us, especially if it's a family weekend, I don't know. And then there's the masked and the unmasked and the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. Like anything could go, could
Anything
be
could go awry. Yes.
yeah. So I think that it's a question of Libra's diplomacy.
Right.
Aries is aggression. Libra is diplomacy.
Right. Okay.
So, and Pluto is, I don't really care what you're going to do, but this has got to change.
Okay. So those are the forces we're sitting down to dinner with, essentially.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Good.
And it's great. I mean, they're great forces. I suggest everyone go look at the moon on Saturday.
Okay.
Let it hit your eye like a big pizza pie.
That's amore.
But then Mercury retrograde, right? And so Mercury goes direct conjunct Algol, trining Pluto.
Okay.
It's quite dramatic, right?
When is that again? When does it start to go retrograde? What day?
So, okay, get this. Mercury goes retrograde on the 10th of May, and Jupiter goes into Aries on the 10th of May. And Mercury goes direct on the 3rd of June.
Okay.
And Jupiter's just bopping along in Aries at that time.
Okay. Well, I do this with Jupiter in Aries because I'm not gonna lie. When I look at it, I'm like, that looks intense. That looks like Jupiter.
But Mercury's retrograde. Mercury's stationing retrograde, saying, "Let's talk about this."
Okay, good.
Let's think about this.
Let's not take action yet.
Yeah, but I think Putin's gearing up. I mean, Putin's losing, right? So he's saying, if you want to join NATO, I'm going to get more aggressive. He's doing all that kind of thing. He's threatening and threatening and threatening. I mean, he's gotten this far by threatening, but he's not winning.
Right. And I heard that, and I don't know if this is true, but that a lot of the countries that aren't in NATO who weren't armed are starting to think maybe they should arm.
Maybe they should. I don't know. I mean, it's terrible.
I don't have
it's terrible.
Yeah, like I'm just saying, like, that to me sounds like Jupiter and Aries, like a lot of.
It does. It feels Aries. Jupiter expands things, and Aries likes to fight.
Yeah. So it just sounds like everybody like, let's all get
this issue of going to war is this is why humans cannot prevail.
Right.
Is because we're always in a war with cancer, in a war with nature, in a war with poverty and drugs and each other. We got to change the metaphor.
Right.
But it's not, I don't know. I don't think the Ukraine shouldn't fight back. So right. I just as an individual, I know I shouldn't, I know that I shouldn't be the aggressor in my life.
Right.
Right. I've learned that I shouldn't start a fight. But if someone actually comes at me, right. Am I not supposed to respond, but is it possible to respond? You know, if someone comes at me with an argument, it's totally possible to respond calmly. But if someone comes at me with a weapon,
Yeah. Maybe we should all
right?
learn martial arts where you learn how to stay centered and learn how not to be violent, but
We should all do martial arts.
have
Yes.
it for protection in case we need it. Because the way I think is like we all act out of our lower self. We all have moments where we fall, and we all act out of not our highest self. And it's actually compassionate to say to somebody, "Hey, stop."
Right. It is.
Don't,
It is.
wait a minute. Are you like, because there's an unconsciousness that happens when we fall into that
Mm-hmm.
place of violence or place of aggression. And so sometimes just somebody saying, "Hey, I don't like that. Stop," is enough to wake you up to say like, "Oh, yeah, I guess sorry." You know what I mean? Like there was a slippage. Sorry to use
Right.
that word.
And that's an alternative to aggression.
Yeah.
That's not about falling apart. That's saying, that's like standing your ground,
Yeah.
being assertive, not
Right.
aggressive.
Yes. And saying like, that's not okay. Like wake up. You can do better than that. You're better than that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think when, there's a reverb here. Maybe you need earphones.
Oh, I don't have any.
Okay. When Mercury goes direct, conjunct Algol on June 3rd,
Right.
Algol is blind rage, but Algol is also in the outrage at the way we destroy nature, the way we kill beauty on this planet. So if it's trining Pluto, and we can transform our blind rage into a kind of assertive action in favor of beauty, that is potentially a way to use Mercury going direct. And when I say beauty, I mean nature.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Might be asking too much, but it's
We can
possible.
try. We can try.
And it's certainly possible in the realm of individuals.
Right. Because that's what we have control over.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I believe that we have what we have control over makes a difference. Like how we act in the world makes a difference. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Okay. So with Mercury going direct and then stationing on Algol and trining Pluto, is that correct? Yeah.
And squaring Saturn.
And squaring Saturn. Okay, because Algol is the fixed star that is the Medusa, like she symbolizes the Medusa, so that would be the blind rage of I guess the denigrated feminine. Would you call Algol?
I would call it exactly that.
Okay, who's like obviously and justifiably in a rage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you can always for 99 cents buy my 12 great myths booklet that's online. Astrology's 12 great myths, and one of them is the Medusa, is me unpacking the Medusa and Algol.
Yeah. I highly recommend that book, and I think you sell it too cheaply because it's a really power-packed book that has been a good foundational reading for my astrology.
I sold it cheaply because I want people to have it, and I have to sell it for something. Okay. I'm a Taurus. I have to ask for
everyone
99
listening should take advantage of it and get it.
I could sell it for $4.99, I guess.
So so that archetype is where, and so there must be also with Mercury stationing on it, there must be some communication of that rage, maybe of the justifiable rage.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that rage misdirected just makes more destruction.
Right. But with it,
that's patriarchy trying to cut the head off the Medusa.
Right.
Don't go there.
Yeah. But with it trining Pluto, it sounds like it's like a positive, not positive, I should stay away from positive and negative. It sounds like it's a successful.
Could be. It's empowering.
Yeah, empowering transformation.
It's about empowerment. Yeah.
Okay. Good. We can look forward to that. The authority of Saturn might try to squash it.
Well, I think the square to Saturn is saying if you don't restrain yourself, it will not be favorable.
Okay.
A lot of restraint is required to access the empowerment.
Very helpful. A lot of restraint is required. Disciplined restraint.
Right.
We can aim for the empowered transformation.
Indeed.
Okay, that's very helpful, Julie. Thank you. So I encourage people to like the YouTube video, check out Julie's monthly insights, check out her book on the 12 Great Myths, and should we meet to talk about Jupiter and Aries later, or sooner or later?
Oh, we could see what it's up to. We could see how it's going. One of the things I like about the Mercury retrograde Jupiter in Aries is that Mercury will sextile Jupiter in Aries.
Okay.
Right? Mercury in Gemini, before it gets back to Taurus, will make a nice sextile to Jupiter on May 19th, I think. So there is a lot to be gained out of reflecting and considering and holding back a little, you know, in terms of what you say and what you're thinking. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. I haven't been able to do that, but I will definitely attempt that.
You're a Sag. You should not have to do that. It's a lot to ask of a double Sag.
What, you don't want to hear my opinion? Anyway.
You were born doing this.
That's what my yoga teacher said. He's like, only two people can use this finger. That's your mother and your teacher.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, thanks so much, Julie.
Thank you, Sarah. It's always so much fun to talk to you.
I love it. I'll see you soon.
Okay.